Welcome back to Ulfbjorn 14 Nerdiness. We got some fun stuff planned. We're not doing quizzes today. I know y'all were excited about that. They are fun, but mixing it up every once in a while. So, as I alluded to last time, I think, and if I didn't, this is some awesome news. Planning on having a little D&D one shot with some friends of mine, and we're gonna have that up here and put that on the channel. So I figured if we're gonna do Dungeons and Dragons, let's do a little bit of an intro primer, get y'all used to some of the basics. It's gonna be a very rough overview. Just me doing some looking around to plan for this. I'm a little out of the loop in the last year. There's been some introductions of classes and races and such, but I do know a little bit of a little bit, so we're going to see what we can do. So we're going to start off by going over some of the basics. Essentially, Dungeons and Dragons is a tabletop role playing game. It involves, theoretically, you could do it one person, but that's not fun. It involves three, four, five, six, seven, however many people that the dungeon master can manage. And you get together, you're acting out characters, rolling dice to see the outcomes of certain events, and all in all, having a wild time. D&D tends to bring out interesting ideas, interesting personalities, and the dice are an unforgiving mistress. So we're going to start with going over a little bit about the dungeon master and some of the stuff that he can do and the players can do and such just as soon as I cough. Perfect. We got quality production here and I am not editing that out. We're doing this in a one take. One take wonder. Alrighty. So essentially, the dungeon master and the players control characters based on the personalities, wants, desires of the characters that they've came up with, as well as um, fate. Fate being through dice. And there's a couple different types of dice, and we'll definitely go into that. Essentially, the dungeon master controls this. They come up with the setting and control what I call NPCs, or what we all call NPCs, non-player characters. These are all of the people in the background, the bad guys, the other good guys, the tavern owners, the shopkeepers, all the laymen and the quest givers. Everybody that's not the main controlled character of one of the players is an NPC. And the dungeon master comes up with plot lines, story hooks, that sort of thing. And the players interact. And what they do has consequences, but whether good or bad, that move the story on. Um, we don't what we There's this thing called railroading where the dungeon master tries to force the players into certain things. It's generally considered a pretty negative term. The players kind of have free reign to do what they want, but there's this unwritten rule that everybody wants to have fun and everybody wants to play the game. So there is some sort of what we call metagaming, using outside knowledge that your characters don't have. This outside knowledge being it's all a game. Let's have fun. So even if your character would really want to do some dick move or something, sometimes you do it, sometimes you don't. You have to, there's certain levels of control and metagaming that you have to do, and certain levels that you don't want to do. If you as a player know something, but there's no way your character would know it, then you maybe don't want to act on it. It's all a balancing act. And in reality, we all just want to have fun. So we talked a little bit about dice. I wanted to go over those, the basics. Essentially, there are 6 different type of dice generally used in D&D. Every once in a while, something else will come up, but 99.9% of the time, it's these 6 dice, and maybe a 7th. We're going to start with the bottom, work our way up, and there's all kinds of different scenarios where the rules tell you which die to use. It's pretty self-explanatory most of the time. We're going to actually, I said start at the bottom. We're going to actually start with the most used die that's used for probably 80% of rolls. This is called a D20, and it is called that because it has 20 sides, each one numbered 1 through 20. 80% of rolls probably use this one die. And this controls everything from whether your attack hits to whether your attempt at persuading somebody succeeds, your attempt at jumping over something succeeds, pushing a boulder, finding a trail when you're tracking an enemy or an animal. All of these things are controlled by the D20 and the result, plus whatever your modifier is. Depending on their stats and skills and abilities, every character is going to have different modifiers for different things. And what you're trying to do when you hit this roll is there's a number that you're trying to hit. It's either the DC or the AC. AC is armor class. So if you're trying to make an attack, the number you're trying to beat is your opponent's AC, armor class. If you're trying to do a skill, or if you're trying to accomplish something besides an attack, you're almost always going against the DC or difficulty class. Generally, those are either set in the rules or came up with by the DM. Almost always, you probably won't know what the DC is ahead of time. But with some common sense, you can your character can know whether it's difficult, how difficult it would be, and you can use that knowledge to figure out if it's something you want to attempt. Now, the important thing with a D20 roll and is natural 20 and natural 1. Now, depending on the rules and different homebrewed or DM set rules, natural 20s and natural 1s can do different things. In some instances, natural 20, especially on a DC roll, could mean automatic success. And by the way, this symbol right here, well, if I can get it angled towards let's see if I can figure this out. Angle it towards the camera. This and symbol, the D&D symbol, is oftentimes used to represent the 20. So this, if this comes up, that's the 20. But there are certain times when you can roll a nat 20, a natural 20, or an automatic success and not succeed. If it's impossible, you're probably not going to succeed. The common example being the dwarf laden with heavy armor falling off a cliff and saying, "I flap my wings and try to fly." Most of the time, the DM should probably say, "No roll, you fail, it's impossible." If he lets you roll, the DC is probably 100, which is impossible to hit because it's not possible to flap your wings and fly as a dwarf. But if you roll, if he lets you roll and you get a nat 20, you don't automatically succeed because it's impossible. The DM says otherwise, and the DM says otherwise. But me as a DM, that's cockamamie. You fail. I wouldn't even have let you roll. Now, the opposite end of that is a natural 1. Now, officially in the current 5th edition rule book, natural 1 is not always a natural fail. It depends on the DC, And if you rolled a 1, but you have a +6 modifier, that's now a 7. If the DC was something super easy and it was a 5, you still succeed, depending on the DM. In my mind, a 1's a fail. Period. I don't care how easy it is. If it's something that's so easy that it was impossible to fail, even with a 1, you didn't roll for it. For instance, if you, in normal circumstances, you're sitting in a inn trying to brush your hair, you don't have to roll for that. You're brushing your hair. But if you're trying to pick a lock, I don't care how easy it is, you could have a bad day. So that you have a chance of fail, no matter how good of a thief you are, no matter how good with lockpicks you are. That's the D20. Next up, let's go to another very basic die, the D6. Probably the most common die you've all seen. And here it is. It has 6 sides, 1 through 6. We're not going to go into specific examples for the rest of the die. I'm just going to show them to you and let you see so you know it has 6 sides. It's a D6. Next up, we're going to go with a D4. This is a very interesting one and a very dangerous one. If you know what Legos are and you know what they do when you step on them, oh my! This has 4 sides. Each one has the numbers 1, 2, 3, or 4 on them. Whatever one's pointed up. For instance, if you rolled and it landed like this, that's a 3. Or we got a 4, etc. All right, so that is a D4, 1 through 4. Next up, let's go with this one. It is a D8. It has 8 sides. They go 1 through 8. Next up, we have a D12. It has 12 sides. All right, 1 through 12. Now, here's the interesting one. This is a D10. It has 10 sides. They are numbered 1 through 10. This is also a D10. It has 10 sides. They are numbered 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 00. The reason for this, if it tells you roll D10, you roll this simple D10. But if you combine both of these, that is 100 different permutations. So you can roll these together as a D100. And the way that works is whatever number comes up on this one is the 10 spot. Whatever one comes up on this one is the 1 spot. So if I rolled this and I got a 30 on this die and a 9 on this die, my answer is 39. They also make D100s as 1 die. They're bigger and they've got 100 sides, but those are not nearly as common. Now, I showed you all these pretty blue die, but as I mentioned and alluded to, sometimes die look a little different. There are hundreds and thousands of different sets that you can get. For instance, this is a D6 that has little bitty skulls in it. And here's a D6 that has different lines on it, each marking the different stages of drawing a pentagram or a pentacle. So there's all kinds of different designs you can get. And the other type of die that does come up every once in a while is a D2. How do you make a die that's a D2? It's a coin. Pretty simple. You flip a coin. It's got 2 sides. Heads is a 1. Tails is a 2, etc. Or you just say heads or tails. Pretty interesting. But that is die. And just so you know, that's the sound of rolling a bunch of die. Next thing I wanted to do is we're just going to go into some rough basics. We're going to go real quick through some of the different race options. Elf, dwarf, human, orc. Those are all ones you're probably familiar with from Lord of the Rings. Let's go find out what some of the other options are in D&D that players and DMs can choose for their characters. Coffee break. All righty. So I'm going to go to an awesome website called D&D Beyond, and we will see a lot of stuff on here that I haven't read the rules for yet. I've been out of D&D for about a year. So once we scroll down, I'm going to go really basic through some of these. Dragonborn, they're part dragon. There's a couple different types, whether you're a fire dragon, an acid dragon, ice dragon, etc., whatever your lineage is. Were you the child of a human and a dragon? Maybe. Were you a wizard who used some spell to turn yourself into part dragon? Maybe. Did any of that stuff happen to an ancestor? Maybe. It's all part of your backstory and you figuring it out. Next, we got dwarfs. Think of Gimli from Lord of the Rings. Short, little, stocky folk. They are warriors with axes and armor and digging in the dirt and loving rocks and mining and living underground. Pretty stereotypical. We also have elves with plenty of different ancestries. Are they wood elves? Are they high elves? Are they light elves? Are they dark elves? And there are some that are sub races of this elf, and there are also some that are going to be labeled specifically later on. Plenty of choices. And these, as you can see, are all in the basic rules, which are available on D&D Beyond for anybody if they want it for free. Other ones we go through, they're going to come out of different books, and unfortunately, you don't have access to them unless you've bought the books. We have gnomes. A lot of people know about gnomes. Short little things, gardens, love of nature and small animals. Pretty standard. Half-elves specifically come from half-elf, half-human, and they are the offspring of those, and they get traits from both. Halfling, this is the secret here, and it's a hobbit. Lord of the Rings, Hobbit. Lord of the Rings has a trademark. So, but anything you know from Lord of the Rings that apply to hobbits, that's halfling. Half orc is half orc, half human. In the original basic rules, you couldn't play as an orc. We can get that later. Next, we have human. There are a bunch of different things. Blah, blah. We know what a human is. Tieflings are specifically half. Let me get this right. Technically, in the lore, there's a difference between a half demon and a half devil and a half with human. I think mostly in the rules you can pick and choose. But there are a bunch of different demons and devils in D&D lore. Next up is from Mythic Odysseys of Theros, which was a D&D and Magic the Gathering partner thing. We have the Leonin. They're anthropomorphic lions, and satyrs, half goat, half human. Pretty popular. If you get by the name Mythic Odysseys of Theros, a lot of Greek influence. All right, next we have Strixhaven, a curriculum of chaos. From here we get Owlin, which are little owl people. They're short, they can fly, they're pretty awesome. That was another Magic the Gathering crossover. Now here we get some stuff, and we're going to go into D&D likes to be PC, unfortunately, politically correct, and they will make changes and adaptations, sometimes for actual balancing of the game, sometimes for PC purposes. So there are certain times when they'll re-release stuff or they'll rewrite rules and characters. So you'll see later stuff called Legacy. As a DM, they have the opportunity to say what we're using and so on and so forth. There's some of these rule changes that I won't allow in my games because it's freaking dumb and we don't need this PC BS. But we're going to go through this and see what we got. Aarakocra are bird people. Aasimar are angel people. Air Genasi are like air elemental. Bugbear, they're in 5e, they're kind of orcish but they're actually goblinoids. So they're a type of goblin. but they're very tall, like bigger than humans, strong and sneaky, got long arms, disproportional, mostly an evil race. And that's another thing we didn't mention. Most of these up here at the top have the option tieflings. A lot of times they're evil, sometimes they're not, depends on how much they like their parents. These ones are pretty neutral, they could be anything. Same here. Aarakocra, Aasimar, Air Genasi, and the Genasi are the ones that elemental people. Technically, they're the children of genies. These ones take off aspects of air. They've all been pretty neutral. They can be good, they can be bad. Bugbear, 9 times out of 10 are bad. PC, people can say they could be either. And yes, you can have somebody who's good, even though their people are evil. It's rare, though. Centaur, half horse, half human. Pretty familiar from Greek mythology. Changelings, they're kind of like, let me see, how do we put it? Doppelgangers, they can change their form. If you think of Nymphadora Tonks from Harry Potter, she can change the way she looks. So can changelings. They're shapeshifters, shape changers. Deep gnomes, they're a type of gnome, like we talked about earlier, from underground, from the Underdark. They're mostly evil, but they don't always have to be. Dwargr are deep dwarves. They are dwarves from the Underdark. Here we got the genie people, the Genasi. This one's earth-based elemental. Eladrin are elves that vary based on the seasons: summer, winter, fall, spring. Next, we have fairies. Tiny, they fly. We kind of know what a fairy is. And I'm not talking a fairy. Firbolg. They are, in old designs, they were kind of like a naturey, hippie cow person. They've kind of become less cow-like in the artwork, but I don't like the current artwork. Think of like half giant meets cow person meets hippie. That's a Firbolg. Fire Genasi, genie folk of fire. Githyanki and Githzerai would not be in any D&D campaign that I would play. They're kind of aliens from a different dimension, technically a different plane of existence. Not really in the cup of tea that I like to play, but they're alien folk from the astral plane. Goblins. We all know what a goblin is. Goliath are technically half giant folk. Live in the hardy north. They're cold-blooded, not in a literal sense, but mountain-born, hardy. I'm going to cough again, so bear with me half a second here. Next up, a newer addition, the Harengon. They are anthropomorphic rabbits. They're fast, lucky, that sort of thing. Hobgoblin, another goblin folk. Think human-size red goblins with an odd Japanese influence. I'm not a fan. This has them rewritten to have Fey ancestry. That's BS. That's not legit from the lore. This is PC duplication. Kinku are interesting. They are half raven, half crow people. Long ago, they tricked some gods, and now they can't speak of their own words. All they can do is mimic. So they can't say something unless they've heard somebody say it before. It can kind of get annoying from a player character point of view. Kobolds. Nowadays, they kind of look like midget dragon people. But in the olden days, they were actually more canine-y. They're an interesting mix of dragon, dog, goblin, little people. All in all, they kind of suck. Lizard folk. They are lizard folk. Minotaur are bull and cow people. Orcs, think Lord of the Rings. Orcs. Now I don't like that they've been rewritten to not be evil. That's BS. Orcs are evil. Here's a rewrite of Seder. Sea elves. They're elves that live in the sea and can breathe underwater. I also do not like the rewrite of Shatterkai. They used to be people obsessed with pain and torment and torture. Basically, think emo kids, goth emo kids, and they were people from another plane that were sent there basically to be tortured. Now they've been rewritten as like elves with like Raven Queen Fae ancestry. It's kind of odd. Shifters, kind of like changelings, only instead of changing between different human forms, they're kind of bestial. Werewolf, but not as strong. Tabaxi are little cat people, like house cat, super fast. Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, if they were slower and not nearly as ninja-y. Triton, they are non-elvish sea elves, kind of, sort of. They are pretty cool. Think Aquaman, but with a little bit of more fish in them. They like walk on two legs, so they're not mermaids, but they're kind of mermaids if they didn't have a tail. They had legs. Water genasi, genie water people, and Yanti are snake people. Now we're going into some of the legacy stuff. We've mostly went over most of this. These are just some of the old images and old rules. A lot of this stuff I much prefer to this current modern PC BS. So we're just going to skip all these until we come to one that we haven't talked about. Lineages is an interesting thing that we're not going to go over right now. Another type of tiefling. We've went over changing Kalishtar. They are kind of dream people. They get dreams from their ancestors and they try to help them, give them benefits. Interesting bit. Warforged, they're androids. Astral elves. This is all from a book that I have not bought or read, so this is interesting. Astral elves are space elves. Gif are hippo people, specifically from space. As you can see, these are all from Spelljammer. This is all space-based. Autognomes look to be android gnome things. Hadazee is another PCBS thing. They used to be considered like flying monkeys from Wizard of Oz, but apparently that's racist. So they've dumbed them down, made them kind of bat-like. I don't know. I call BS. Plasmoids are plasma people, apparently. And Three King are bug people. Let's see here. Any more? Loxodon, we have elephant people. Simics are like an alien race that like kind of gets surgically implanted with animal parts. So think of like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. Only like sometimes these are interesting. Like they can get like manta ray rays or like things so they can glide or who knows what. And Vedokeen are like these weird's a bad word. Interesting, partially amphibious. Like they get bonuses because they're like dispassionate and all they want to do is improve and be perfect. It's kind of odd. This all came from the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, which is again another one of those Magic the Gathering knockoffs, or not knockoffs, but where they partnered up. The Verdant from Acquisitions Incorporated is an interesting bit. I don't like it, and I don't use these rules. But these were like an online like campaign got really famous, and they got their own book. Strange rules. I don't use this race. Locath are an interesting one. They are half fish people. I don't really like them either, but they're not as bad. Kinder are another brand new one who got PCified. Basically, in the lore of Dragonlance, Kinderfolk were kleptomaniacs, basically, but that's apparently bad. So they PC'd them up, and now they're just fearless and curious. No, they used to steal anything and everything because they were curious. That was like their whole thing. They were curious to the nth degree. Grung are poison dart frog people. And then we've already talked about these. All right, real quick, we've been going 31 minutes. So next up, we're just going to talk about the classes real quick, which are basically the jobs. And we're going to be pretty quick. Barbarians, they're strong, they're angry, they smash stuff. Think the Hulk. Bards, they play music, and their music is so good they can buff and make their party strong and make their opponents weak. Clerics are godly people. Devouts, they heal a lot. They can, and everybody can do multiple things. Nobody fits into a box. There are so many subclasses, classes within classes. Really, anybody can do anything, but I'm giving you the stereotypes off the back. Druids, hippie folk, they do magic and they transform into animals. Fighters, they fight. Monks, they punch. This is, think Asian monk, not European monk. Paladins, very devout, godly people, but they are the sword arm of the church. They also ride horses a lot. Rangers, think Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. They shoot bows, have pet animals, and such. Rogues, they steal and they lockpick and they find traps and they sneak. Sorcerers have their power from within. Generally, one of their parents slept with somebody that was like superhuman magic, a god, a dragon, a devil, a genie, something. Yeah. Warlocks, they make a pact, sometimes with a demon, sometimes with a devil, sometimes with a god. But essentially, they get their magic through a bargain. Wizards study. They real smart. They read books. They do magic from that. And artificers, they real smart. They build stuff. They tinker. They build contraptions. That's their magic is less magic-y and more contraption-y based. I have this one hidden because it's also from kind of like the Verdun. But I do like this one. Blood Hunter, they are like your magic hunters. Think Van Helsing. All right, we've went through a whole lot, and there is hours and hours and days. I could spend an hour easy or more on every race, on every class. We could talk on rules for days, and it's all good. And there are dozens of good YouTube channels out there to do that. I probably won't be. We may come back to the rules and podcast, bitch, moan, groan, and complain about some stuff, talk about some awesome stuff. You never know. But for right now, this is a good primer. If you've never heard of D&D, now you kind of know. Think nerdy board game with dice meets Lord of the Rings, and maybe throw in The Witcher and like Skyrim. I mean, these are all aspects of it all. And there are thousands more permutations you can think of. Every race can be every class. Every class could be any race. And there are sub races and subclasses. The choices are endless. Plus, we're not even talking about the skills. Strength, which is how strong you are. Dexterity, which is how quick you are. Constitution is how hardy you are. Wisdom, how wise you are. Intelligence, how intelligent you are. Charisma, how charismatic you are. And all of the skills and all of the benefits and buffs and bonuses and rules. We could go on and 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 on. It's okay. But we went over some basics. I know it was probably boring. I know it was probably action packed. And there are other people who've delivered it much nicer. That's okay. I just want to get it out to y'all. And I'm looking forward to getting this D&D game going with these friends of mine. Don't quite know when we're going to do it. There may be some videos on the channel between that and now. I don't know. But this will get you started, get you something to think about. You can get on D&D Beyond and look at the basic rules, look at all the base like free stuff. Plenty to read just in the free stuff to think about. But that's enough for today. I do appreciate you sticking with me. Do the YouTube thing, like, comment, subscribe, share the video. I do appreciate it. Thanks so much. Have an amazing day and peace out.